Let's talk.
Giles Brown.
The story. For more than 50 years, the fight for the Christmas number one has been part of our national story. It's where pop, celebrity, charity and culture collide. From the Beatles to Slade, Band Aid to Mariah Carey, this is the story of the Christmas child. It's also the story of Britain itself, believe it or not. So this geopolitically important tome is the subject of a new book by friend of the show, Marc Burrows. Marc, good morning to you.
Good morning. It's the 1st of December. I think I can actually say Merry Christmas now as well.
Yeah, I was about to get mine in first, you so-and-so, but there you go, with jingle bells on the top. I just played, obviously, Last Christmas by Wham, because, I mean, that is part of what has to be done this time of year.
Yeah, and Last Christmas by Wham, I think, is the ultimate final boss of Christmas number ones. It was Christmas number one in 2023. It was Christmas number one in 2024. It is the favourite to be Christmas number one this year. And if you put a gun to my head and tell me what I think Christmas number one 2026 will be, I think it might be Last Christmas by Wham. I think that's it forever now.
Can I just say something on this point? Because, I mean, I live my life by the teachings of George Michael, as in, if I'm never going to dance again, Club Tropicana drinks are free. If you're going to do it right, do it with me. I mean, that's the basis of those are the Trinity for my existence. I just want to say that Last Christmas got one of the most disturbing lines of plastic surgery muck-ups I've ever heard, which is, baby, don't you recognise me? Hey, it's been a year, it doesn't surprise me. It begs into question, what on earth have you had done that you cannot recognise somebody, presumably you've been very intimate with, a mere 12 months later? Marc?
Well, you've got to remember that George got very famous between 1983 and 1984, right? He had a glow-up, he really did.
Right. And of course, that hairstyle, I mean, it is one for the ages and the 80s, isn't it? Let's face it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that was Princess Diana's hairstyle as well. So
She donated it for him for the Christmas single, right? So let's get away from Wham if we possibly can. So
there's no getting away from Wham.
I know.
You can't get away from Wham at this time of year.
I know, but I tried to non-stop with the Wham. Mistletoe vinyl. So come on, mistletoe and vinyl. When did Christmas number one start being a thing then, Marc?
So, 1973. Before 1973, nobody cared about Christmas number one. No, you got number ones. There's a chart. There's Christmas. Yeah. You got number ones, and people wanted to be number one at Christmas because you'd sell a lot of records. Because a 7-inch single is a perfect Christmas present. It's cheap. It's portable. It's a stocking filler. Kids love it. And also, the rules kind of changed at Christmas. People bought different sorts of records. You'd buy a record for your granny. You'd like songs that wouldn't be hits. Children's songs became hits. But no one really cared about being Christmas number one as this cultural thing that it became. And then in 1973, something happened, which surprisingly was an economic downturn, believe it or not. Yeah. For anyone of a certain age, which I am not included, I'm slightly too young for it, we'll remember 1973 being a bit bleak. It was the winter of discontent as opposed to the winter of discotent, which is what happened with Boney M later. But it was the winter of discontent. The Prime Minister issued a statement saying it would be the hardest Christmas since the war. There were power cuts. There was enforced power cuts every night at 10:30 because of the miners' strike and the coal shortage. And it was a really cold winter. People were genuinely struggling. And into this, you drop these two incredible glam rock Christmas singles by Slade and Wizard that are like unabashed, fantastic celebrations of British Christmas. Like, they're not schmaltzy, they're not nostalgic, they're just, it's party time, isn't it brilliant, isn't Christmas great? And it genuinely cheered people up. And you couldn't afford much, but you could probably afford a 7-inch single. And so that a lot of people engage with that as a way of celebrating, a way of cheering themselves up. And that's the Slade single especially, went straight to number one, very rarely happened back then. So was the fastest selling record of all time in this country at that point, a record it held until 1984 when, surprise, surprise, another Christmas song displaced it. And it sells through the nose. It becomes number one. It stays number one for ages. And the next year, like every single band is looking at that going, how many records did they sell? Right, we're going to have a go at this as well. And then the next year after that, it's Bohemian Rhapsody, not even a Christmas single, but it's number one while Christmas comes and goes. Everyone goes, well, Christmas number one doesn't even have to be about Christmas. And that's where it comes from. That's when we start. And then it becomes a media story. It becomes a thing that the betting shops get involved with.
Yeah.
It becomes this idea that to be the biggest pop star, you have to have a Christmas number one. And that's where it starts.
Here's the interesting thing, as opposed to our cousins across the pond, because they, if you are, and I was around in 1973, so, I do remember those days, because I couldn't, the only thing I had to play was my Evel Knievel by candlelight. But anyway, let's move swiftly on, and that's not code for something. But in America, of course, they had the Christmas album. I mean, the Beach Boys had a Christmas album. The Ronettes had a Christmas album. I still think that Be My Baby is a Christmas song, but there you go. But there had been a tradition of Christmas albums in the States, but not Christmas number ones.
Well, there'd be Christmas pop singles, and yeah, there are Christmas albums, but actually, a lot of them didn't really. A lot of the singles weren't particularly big hits. Obviously, you've got "Rocking Around the Christmas Tree" and "Jingle Bell Rock," but those go back to the 50s. The Beach Boys put out "Little Saint Nick" in 1963. It tanked, didn't do well at all. That the album you mentioned with the Ronettes, the Phil Spector Christmas album, that came out in 1963, right? And we think about that as that's what Christmas records sound like. The Phil Spector Christmas record, the Ronettes and "Darling Love" and all of that. That record absolutely tanked. It did nothing in 1963 because it came out the same day Kennedy was shot, which slightly overshadowed it.
Yeah.
It wasn't until the end of the 60s when the Beatles started talking about how important Phil Spector was, and that album took on this kind of legendary lost album status, and the Beatles re-released it through Apple Music, that it actually became, through Apple Records, that it became this big, important record. So actually, there wasn't that much in the way of Christmas pop music at all, even on albums. But in the US or the UK, which I find fascinating. In the UK, we didn't really have Christmas albums either until 1985, when the Now That's What I Call Christmas people did the Christmas album, they called it, and that was the first collecting these pop Christmas songs of the last 10 years, because there hadn't really been pop Christmas songs before that in the UK. So we get the first proper British Christmas album is the Christmas album, and that's a really interesting one, because what it does is, obviously, it has all the obvious ones on it. It has Slade and Wizard and Band-Aid and Paul McCartney and stuff, but they have to fill it out.
Yeah.
So they have to find some other records that to make up the numbers. So they go digging for ones they've got licenses to, and they dig out Chris de Burgh's A Spaceman Came Travelling, which was a complete flop, which no one had heard of, and it gets put on that record, the weirdest Christmas song of all time. What's more Christmassy than The Stranger Spoke, He Said, Do Not Fear, I Come From a Planet a Long Way From Here. They dig out Chris Rere's Driving Home for Christmas. They dig out Elton John's Step Into Christmas, which, despite Elton being a massive star, that song had done nothing in 1973 when it came out. It got to number 26 and dropped out again.
Which is strange, because at the time Elton was absolutely surrounded by white stuff.
Exactly, yeah. He was dreaming of a white Christmas pretty much every year, just like the ones he used to know, but doesn't really know anymore for medical reasons.
Yes.
But the thing is, what happened is those songs that were quite obscure then became Christmas classics that we play every single year, and I find that incredibly, really interesting. No one would know that Chris de Burgh song if it hadn't been picked out of obscurity and put on that album. But then there's songs they passed over, like Shawaddy Waddy's Hey Mr. Christmas, a massive hit in 1974. You never hear that anymore, and I feel sorry for Dave Bartram from Shawaddy Waddy who wrote that, because had that song been put on that Christmas album in 1985, he'd probably be substantially richer these days.
I'm just thinking about so basically, I mean, let's brush over, and I only wish we could, because I once unintentionally saw Chris de Burgh perform. That it was sprung on me as a surprise. But Chris, so you're saying that Chris Rere's Driving Home for Christmas, which is an absolute staple, is actually on it says two things. One, I think we've forgotten the immense power of Now That's What I Call Music as a cultural thing during the 80s, because it was a massive thing, wasn't it? If you were on that, you were having that was you done. Forget the play.
And right into the 90s.
Yeah.
To be honest, up until the digital era, because it's a cheap way of getting loads of music in the same place. Nowadays, playlists and streaming has rendered those pretty useless. But yeah, the idea in 1985, you could go out and buy an album that had every single Christmas song that you wanted to hear on it, and you put it on every year while you're decorating the tree, while you're opening your presents. like that. It was revolutionary. It made a millionaire of some of these people.
I was going to say, so Driving Home for Christmas was actually, it really came to prominence on the Now That's What I Call Christmas album then, rather than...
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and well, Chris re-released it a little bit later, and it was a reasonable hit, but if it hadn't have been on that record, it wouldn't have been something we played every year.
Now, charity, mate, not off, mate, but charity, mate, because I'm on the radio. Charity, it became a thing. Can we just basically say that, obviously Band Aid is the one that kicks it all off, and you can, if you were to do a charity record sort of lineage tree, we would go from Do They Know It's Christmas all the way through to, We Built This City on Sausage Rolls, or whatever the hell they called it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the one that actually starts it, isn't it? Like, charity records weren't a completely new thing, but no one ever made them cool. And then 1984 comes along, and a washed-up pop star. Let's not forget that Bob Geldof was on his uppers when, like, there's a review of the single in Melody Maker that says it says Bob Geldof's latest attempt at a career relaunch, and then it's got it crossed out with great charity record put next to it, which is a little bit cynical.
Snooty, weren't they?
They were.
He was snooty to them back because he didn't give a flying proverbial either, did he?
No, absolutely. But the thing, and actually, he was very sincere about it. And what he does with Band Aid, which no one had done before, is he collects the coolest, the biggest pop stars in the country. And 1984, you've got to remember, was a golden era for British pop. Like the early 80s, the very early 80s were a bit of in the late 70s in terms of massive on the world stage pop records was a little bit drab for Britain. But then by 1984, Duran and Spandau and Culture Club, like they're the biggest bands in the world. They're huge. They're like English bands are big in America for the first time in years. So it's actually like this incredible pop moment. It's not just a charity record. It's this kind of celebrate. It also sort of celebrates everything, but it totally changes the way we approach pop music and charity records, and it becomes quite an extraordinary thing because 1984, like 1973, is another economic downturn. It's another quite hard year for people. There's another miners' strike, things like that, and I think people buy Band Aid not just because they want to help people thousands of miles away, which of course they do, and it raises loads of money, but also because it feels like they can control something, they can do something, like to get some control back. We can't do much, but we can go out and buy this cheap single and we know we're going to help somebody. And it changes everything because that whole grammar of music videos with the pop stars with the big headphones on and their arms around each other, right? That comes from Band Aid. That had never been done before that. And it's never done quite like that again. Everyone looks a bit knackered, a bit hungover, it's all a bit thrown together on Band Aid. Years later, that wouldn't happen. If you go to the 20th anniversary version of Band Aid, they know it's going to be a massive thing. Everyone's turned up all dolled up and glitzy. No one's like Sting wandering in with his dog and a coffee, or Spandau Ballet and Duran who'd been drinking heavily and raced their private jets across Europe to get home that day, and all to get back to the recording, and all look absolutely hanging out of their bums. They looked so hungover, and Bananarama tumbling out of a tiny Volkswagen Golf. Like it feels really low key and it feels really friendly. And you don't get that anymore because then, of course, America covers it with "We Are the World," and it's a completely different thing. It's millionaires and glitz and glamour.
Quincy and the whole, and Quincy's there, and the whole bits and pieces,
Yeah, exactly. And Michael Jackson, that brings an entirely different kind of pop royalty, but Band Aid changes it, and after that there is this tradition, and most of not most of, but a good chunk of the Christmas number ones since then have been charity records. I mean, because charity is part of Christmas, isn't it? Like that's like going back millennia. Christmas is about two things: having a big party and doing good work and charity. It's in A Christmas Carol, like where it's a time when abundance rejoices and want is most keenly felt. So the Christmas number one.
That's a statement. Abundance rejoices and well, yes, I love it. The other thing is the fact. Go on.
He had a good turn of phrase, that Charles Dickens. Keep an eye on him. I think he's going to do okay. But so charity. So you get two sides of the Christmas single: the pop bangers and the charity song.
I mean, again, let's say it's two. I just want to say two things. One, Paul Young is the first voice on that, and Paul Young first thing in the morning. I've interviewed him. He's not the most approachable of chaps first thing in the morning, to put it mildly. Well, so
there's a lot of grumpy people on that. There's a lot of grumpy people on that record. Paul Beller's not on it, who is possibly the least approachable man in the history of pop music.
But also, I remember being, you know, because that became, so it comes out in, you know, it's a huge hit in 1984. I'm 16. I'm going to a lot of discos put on by my local public school. So I just remember all these public, you know, all the young farmers singing "Feed the World" because it's the 80s, and it's, you know, for a certain class of people, of which my parents were probably one. It's, you know, it's consumerism and the whole thing. And here we are at a public school singing "Feed the World." I mean, talk about tongue in cheek, Mark.
Well, yeah, there's a certain amount of that, and also, you know, that if you look at the music press around the time, people were writing in going, well, I'm glad all these millionaires have spared an afternoon to help out people. There's a lot more they could have done, surely. Although, actually, a lot of them do. Like George Michael, who, let's face it, is one of the greatest humans to ever live, put all of the royalties to Last Christmas to Band-Aid. Yeah. Like, you know, they did put their money where their mouth was. But, yeah, there is a certain amount of cynicism, and there is a certain amount of, it's millionaires raising money for charity. Fine. I mean, maybe they could just put their hand in the pocket, but a lot of them did. But
it leads to Live Aid, which even the new NME, and I've still got the issue from 1985, which says with a picture of Geldof on the front cover being hoisted aloft, saying "Rock's finest hour." So Yabu sucks.
Yeah, exactly. And there's lots of stuff you can be cynical about, but the heart was in the right place for that whole project. Yeah. And it is every single year it comes back.
Cometh the hour. There are certain things you have to do during Christmas, which is obviously put up the tree, you know, ding your dong merrily on high, but also... What is Cliff? It's Cliffmas as well, isn't it? It is Sir Cliff Richard makes an appearance. There's two, isn't it? It's the masculine and the feminine, the yin and the yang. You've got Sir Cliff, and you've got, you know, the demon queen who is Mariah Carey.
Yeah, Mariah. It's Mariah. You really have a problem with that, with the word Mariah, don't you? You can't even bear to say her name
because I have such trauma. Yeah, that I can't actually say the word correctly.
We defrost Cliff and we defrost Mariah at this time of year. Although I think Mariah probably does better. We defrost Cliff and we summon Mariah by chalking a pentagram on the floor. I think Cliff's day is sadly, bless him, as done. He was Mr. Christmas for a while. Like, you have Christmas number ones on the trot, Mistletoe and Wine, 1988, and then he's on the 1989 Band-Aid. It's like the 1989 Band-Aid 2. You look at the list of people on it; it's all the cool singers of the day. It's Kylie and Jason and Bros and Wet Wet Wet, and then Cliff Richard's name's in the middle. But you go, well, yeah, because he's Cliff Richard. He was massive in the 80s. People forget how big. In 1989, Cliff Richard sold out 2 nights at Wembley Stadium.
Stadium.
Stadium. Yeah,
not arena. Stadium.
Yeah, absolutely astonishing. And then he has the first Christmas number one of the 90s as well, with Saviour's Day. And then that's his last Christmas number one, sadly. He really wanted another one. And he tried again with Millennium Prayer in 1999, which, if you remember, is when he put the tune of Auld Lang Syne to the words of the Lord's Prayer and called it Millennium Prayer because he'd noticed from Robbie Williams that putting the word millennium in a song in 1999 is a guaranteed hit. It didn't get Christmas number one. It gets knocked off by Westlife, and I felt a bit sorry for Cliff for that, because if Cliff had got Christmas number one, it would have not only would he have equaled the Beatles record for the most Christmas number ones at the time, and that record would stand sadly until Lad Baby a few years ago, which is atrocious. Yeah. But also had it then stayed number one for a following week into the new year and been the first number one of the 2000s, he would have had a number one record in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s, and been the only artist to have done that. Unfortunately, he didn't get that. Westlife knocked him off. He's still bitter about it. I don't think Cliff is having another... Well, Cliff could have another Christmas number one, but I think the only way Cliff has another Christmas one is under circumstances that are tragically inevitable if they happen at the right time.
Oh, God, no.
That's my theory.
I get that. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Can we talk about, because, you know, back in the 80s and the halcyon days when I was, you know, digging, you know, shugging a rug and trying to get a quick snog at a young farmer's ball. The one thing we didn't have back in then was Britain's Got Talent or X Factor or Dancing or whatever, and of course that's had a massive impact, didn't it, on the Christmas number one scene?
Oh yeah, I mean, throughout the 2000s, reality TV just dominates it, because it's about pop music, and you get to be the biggest pop star of the day by any means possible, and by being on the biggest TV show of the day is one of the ways. Simon Cowell specifically times the X Factor so the winner can be Christmas number one, because why Christmas number one is the crowning achievement. It makes you. It says you are the biggest name in pop. Why not start your career with a Christmas number one? The irony being, most of those artists also ended their career with that Christmas number one, because many of them didn't have very much else, with some exceptions, obviously. But it's also the exception that it's also the thing that proves why it's important, because by the time you get to 2009, X Factor have had Christmas number one 4 years in a row, and the nation as one said, no, we're not having this anymore.
Killing in the name of...
We're gonna choose another record, and this brilliant couple, John and Tracy Mortar, come up with this fantastic idea of creating a campaign against the X Factor and picking a song, because the download charts mean that any song can be Christmas number one, and picking a song as a protest, and they pick Rage Against the Machine's "Killing in the Name."
Yes.
Because I asked them why, and they said, "What?" I said, "Why that song?" And they said, Tracy said, because she loved the idea of it being the last song played on Christmas Day, Top of the Pops, before the Queen. And I can't fault that logic. That's amazing. And people vote with their feet, because the X Factor phoned it in that year. Like the year before, it did a cover of Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah, which is pretty hard to argue with. It's one of the best songs of all time.
Yeah.
But in 2009, they phoned it in. The winner that year, Joe McElderry, bless him, lovely bloke, lovely singing voice. They give him a song by a Miley Cyrus album track called "The Climb." It's really dull. So now that the fight is on, people can start to go, well, actually, no, we're going to vote for something else. We're not letting this uppity little man. We don't like it over here when people get ideas above their station. We're not going to let this uppity little man get away with dictating what we think is going to be Christmas number one, because it's important to us. And people vote with their feet. And Rage Against the Machine's 1992 agit rock rap metal classic "Killing in the Name" becomes Christmas number one, which is one of my favourite things that has ever happened.
I had completely forgotten about that, because nothing says, gathered around the Christmas tree than "Killing in the Name" by Rage Against the Machine.
Then F you, I won't do what you tell me.
To. And now the Queen. What more needs to be done?
It is. There is a kind of perfect.
Yeah.
There's a perfection to that. It is as a little. It got described at the time by the guitarist from Rage Against the Machine as the anarchy miracle of 2009, which is absolutely is amazing. I just love that.
When it comes to writing this, Mark, how much fun? We've only got 3 minutes, mate. So how much fun do you have putting this together? And because look at how we have changed as a nation as well. So go on, explain.
I loved writing this book. Partly because I've been obsessed with Christmas music. I mean, I've been on the show before talking about serious, weighty tomes I've written about Nirvana and the Manic Street Preachers and David Bowie. This seems a lot frothier, but actually I really loved writing this. Partly because it is so weird and unique and so British. Like only Britain does it, and there's songs that only we know. Like you can't play Shakin' Stevens in America. They don't know it. They don't have Shakin' Stevens in America. They have the poor man's Shakin' Stevens, Elvis Presley. Exactly. They don't have those. They don't have Cliff Richard in America. They have Mariah Carey and gun violence. So they have a different culture, and I find that fascinating. And it was so much fun to write this and find out about all these stories. And I interviewed people and go through. And then, but also it's I find it genuinely interesting, because although it is frothy and nostalgic and silly, but actually, if you look at it, it's also what happens if you look at the chart in the same week every single year over 50 years. Like, what does that tell you about how we listen to music, about how music is consumed and bought? What does it tell you about the country we live in? It actually tells you quite a lot. And so it's like there's a bit of weight to it as well. It's not just sort of Christmas silliness. It's actually something that's really interesting.
Can I just say, by the way, talk on Shakin' Stevens, I don't know if I've told you this before, but Shakin' Stevens lived in Marbella, where I'm based now at the moment, and he bought a house on the front line of a golf course, because it was Marbella, and he called it, quote unquote, Esta Casa Vieja, and that means in Spanish, this old house. Which true story. It was above the door. Yeah, it really was. So if you ever
good for Shaky.
Good for Shaky.
Good for Shaky.
What are you hoping that people will learn then from Mistletoe and vinyl? What life lesson?
Partly, I'm hoping that it's the realisation that we are a bonkers country. Britain is a bonkers country, and the pop music we make is so fundamental to us. I also hope it lets people slightly reevaluate songs that they take for granted, because we've heard these songs so often that we don't really listen to them.
Right.
Like, you don't really listen to Slade's "Merry Christmas Everyone" anymore. You just hear it; it's there. You don't actually listen to it. Listen to that song; it's brilliant. It's a really brilliant song. It's so minimalist. It's got these slashing chords and this wonderful dancing bass line. Listen to Last Christmas by Wham. It's a gorgeous song. It's an amazing piece of music. George Michael on complete form plays every instrument on that song. They're records that we take for granted, but have become fundamental to a really big and important part of our lives. This thing we do every single year, and these traditions that are built into it. And the pop music is like the building blocks of this. We listen to the same songs every year, and if I can make people just take a little step back and go, well, that's actually really interesting. And do you know what? This song's a banger. And maybe even go, do you know what? Cliff Richard's Millennium Prayer, better record than I gave it credit for.
The book is called Mistletoe and Vinyl. You can order it via our own virtual bookstore. Mark, if people want to follow me online, where can they find you?
I'm 20th Century Mark, Mark with a C, 20th 20 on everything. Mark, named after Mark Bolan. That's me.
The book is called.
You can find me anywhere.
Crash the news. So there we go. Mark Burrows, Merry Christmas, mate, and thanks so much for your time today.
Same to you.